Hey guys, so the question I want to pose today with regards to manifestation is this. How do we feel more like ourselves? How do we navigate the world? How do we structure our lives? How do we take on tasks so that ultimately we feel more like ourselves? And that's a difficult question to answer because sometimes when we fall into habitual patterns, we think those patterns are us. And we think, oh, I do this or I do that. I'm too shy. I don't like public speaking. It's very difficult for me to be in front of a camera. That's just me. That's who I am. But that's not necessarily true. So when I say, how do we feel more like ourselves? What I'm really asking, I guess, is how do we self-actualize? How do we become more than we are? How do we get to a place in our lives where we feel like we are activating and utilizing and reaching into all the various different dimensions of our character? We're not only one thing, are we? Take me, for example. I'm half black, I'm half Indian, and I love aspects of both of those sides of my culture. But I'm also a big fan of British mythology and British culture. What someone else might say, white history, right? Does that mean I'm white? No, because I love Hinduism, I love blues, I love jazz, etc. So I'm a complex, multidimensional, three-dimensional human being full of subtleties and nuances. And that's just a part of my interests, right? I have a whole slew of interests with regards to art and history and literature, etc. So how do I self-actualize? How do I reach into my soul, into my psyche, and feel like those various aspects of my interests and my soul aren't just lying dormant, and that I'm not just reactive. I haven't just become a slave to my habits, especially my bad habits. Yeah, these are the questions I want to ask with regards to manifestation. So I think the first topic that I want to tackle is potential. Do many of us, or most of us, even really know what our potential is? I think potential, we can intuit it sometimes. But sometimes we have no idea what our potential is until we've stepped into unfamiliar territory. Let me give you an example. Like, I always knew I had potential to be an artist, right? But there were so many other areas of my life and my personality where I sensed depth, but I didn't know what that depth pertained to. I didn't know what it was about. Just like a sort of an X or a question mark over here on this part of my soul or this part of my character. And I was like, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that I might be good at. I have no idea what it is. And I think that's potential, untapped potential, right? It's like power, it's possibility, but it doesn't have any form because we've never stepped into certain arenas where that form has to express itself in the physical world. So there's that. Some things we know we're good at, or we could be good at, and other things we have no idea until we pick up a guitar or until we take up a sport and suddenly we're like, oh my God, I have an aptitude for this. Or if not an aptitude, I at least have a really intense fascination or interest in a particular subject or idea that I had no idea was there before. That's what interests me as a person. So how does this relate to manifestation, and how does this relate to how do we feel more like ourselves? Well, so one step is the potential step, right? Trying to get a sense of what our potential might be and being aware that sometimes until we take the plunge into a new subject or a new arena, we're just not gonna know. And we have to be okay with that kind of question mark. Second step, I think, is play. And as adults, I think sometimes we forget very easily how to play. Unless we're in love or unless we have a group of friends that we're very affectionate with, it's very easy in the adult world to forget how to play. What do I mean by that? As kids, play is easy. You run around, you imagine things, you interact in imagined stories. You're a king, you're a warrior, you're a princess, you're a nurse, you're a doctor, and other kids can enter into that fantasy really easily, and you can share those fantasies and they help you grow, they help you develop, they entertain you, etc. We do the same thing as adults, right? When we're in love, often we enter into a kind of like shared language with our partner, right? Our girlfriend or boyfriend, husband, wife, whatever. We talk in a language filled with in-jokes, references to things in the past. We might talk in a kind of childlike, kind of baby language sometimes, to be cute and to be sweet, to make the other person laugh. A kind of shared playtime between you and a person you care about. Okay, so then play. How does that relate to manifestation and feeling more like ourselves? Self-actualizing, I guess. I think it's about taking a risk. It's about stepping into the unknown. Like I said, it's about also being afraid to fail. Like as a writer, everyone's heard of writer's block, right? I've suffered from this in the past. And one of the things that I think is so debilitating about writer's block or about any kind of creative expression is this weird desire to get it right the first time. Like, oh, I don't want to create something that's shit. Whatever I create has to be amazing. We might not say that, but we're kind of held back. We're kind of frozen sometimes by, this is not good enough. Maybe I shouldn't even try, right? Whereas me, the thing that has helped me kind of improve and get over that fear of imposter syndrome or not being good enough is, it's okay. It's okay for me to write pages and pages of absolute shit because I'm still creating. I'm still tapping into my mind. I'm trying to self-actualize, and I'm not Stradivarius. I'm not Mozart. I'm not Shakespeare. I'm just a guy trying to use his creativity to better his life. So I have to be okay with creating garbage sometimes, or little lines and phrases within the things that I write that actually might be not too bad. They might be quite good. They might be interesting. They might be provocative or evocative. And the rest of it, not so much. So we have to be okay with that. And I think entering into a state of play is the easiest way to take a step into the unknown, right? Because when you're at play, it's like you're just experimenting. You're having fun. You're not so attached to the outcome. It doesn't have to be this way or that way. You don't have to dot all your I's and cross all your T's and make everything perfect. Oh no, what will someone say about this thing I've made? Or this new subject I'm tackling? Or this new sport I'm trying to learn? Will they laugh at me? Will they mock me? Will I not be good enough? Will I be humiliated? Fuck all that. When you're at play, you're just at rest. You're easygoing. It's fun. And if you fuck it up, you fuck it up and you move on and you try again. That spirit of play, I think, is essential for an artist, but not just for an artist. I think it's essential for self-help, for spiritual growth, for mental health, for clarity, for therapy. So many things. Once we can detach ourselves from the psychological pressure of doing something a particular way, otherwise we have failed or we're failures, we are immediately released from the bonds and the chains that we've kind of clasped ourselves in. So play is how we access potential. It's how we try new things. It's how we get closer to the vastness of whatever is going on inside our heads and our souls and our hearts. And whatever question marks, whatever things we haven't tried but might be inside us, just waiting for the right moment. We can only get at them by being relaxed enough and calm enough and playful enough to even go there in the first place, right? So that's what I would say. The third point I want to talk about, this is all with regards to manifestation as well, because I believe manifestation is self-actualization ultimately. We are one consciousness connected to the universe, connected to the world in which we live. Inside is outside, outside is inside. We're breathing in and out all the time. We're interacting with the environment. We're giving off tiny little skin cells that are going into the air. We're part river, we're part sea. The air of our cities is now a part of our lungs and our DNA, and we're constantly exchanging information and energy with the environment, is what I'm trying to say. So any real grasp of manifestation has to take into account that fact. We see ourselves as singular bodies, objects moving around three-dimensional space. And that's true up to a point, but on a microcosmic level or a microscopic level or an energetic level, we are constantly an ebb and flow with our environment. So The third point I want to talk about is structure and discipline. So play is fine, right? Trying to reach in and look at your potential is fine. And being at rest and being at ease and calm enough and having a sense of childlike wonder and curiosity to venture into those unknown realms is essential. That's play. But without structure and discipline, that play is kind of ephemeral. It can't really be anchored to your life in service of an adult ideology or an adult agenda, right? Kids just want to play, they want to be, and that's great. But as adults, oftentimes we have to get from point A to point B, then to point D, C, and to point Z. We have a whole route planned out, or we have 1,000 steps that we have to take in order to get to our goals. For example, say you want to become a published novelist, but you have dyslexia, let's say, right? Is being a published novelist impossible? No, it's not. But there are so many steps you have to take to get there. First is trying to get a hold of that dyslexia, trying to either cure it or manage it in some way that doesn't impede your creative process. Spell check is one way, a laptop is another way, an encyclopedia and a thesaurus and a dictionary on your bedside are other ways, right? So there are always ways to overcome any problem. And play isn't enough of a strategy to overcome those problems. And that's what I mean about being an adult, right? We need structure and discipline, and it's one of the hardest things to employ, especially when we're caught in cycles of trauma or abuse or self-doubt or feeling like we're not good enough, that we're imposters, that we don't really have what it takes, because it requires effort and energy to employ structure and discipline. So how do we achieve these things? How do we unify play and structure in order to cultivate our potential or to even become aware of our potential? And I think this is where we get to the notion of time. Time and breaking down the path into small enough steps. We have so much information that we do not apply literally or practically. And part of structure and discipline is just applying those things literally and practically. If, for example, you want to write a novel, but you're slightly dyslexic or you have real trouble with language and letters and words, then you need certain writing practices that help you get over that help you get better at that, right? And if you can only take that up to a point, and you're always going to have a certain issue, a kind of fluctuation around language, then that's when things like a spell check program is going to be invaluable. That's when things like a dictionary is going to be invaluable, et cetera, or just asking someone else to proofread your work, and they can spell check your grammar, they can spell check your language and punctuation, et cetera. There are always ways, but that requires structure and discipline. And that's just about not letting go of the excitement of play, but realizing that it has to sit right next to the kind of the calm, sober nature of maturity. And those things combined is where you create real results. And it's not always so easy to be sober and mature and calm and rational when we feel like we're not good enough. And with regards to manifestation, when you're trying to create something out of nothing, you can only do that if you have the entire equation, let's say, right? 2 + 2 = 4. Well, if you want to create something out of nothing, 4, right? 2, which is play, +2, which is structure and discipline and applying practical information, equals 4. We need both because we are both. And the best way to harness those two things is to enjoy them both. And it's very difficult to enjoy structure and discipline if you let go of play. So what I'm saying is, step into the unknown, try new things, don't worry about failing, but try to create structures to employ these bits of creativity, to make them coherent, to bring them into some kind of whole. So let me use an analogy. say, for example, you want to get stronger, you want to get physically stronger, right? You can eat healthier foods. That will be part of the equation. Another part of the equation is moving your body more, right? So that's the discipline, that's the structure. And we don't like structure generally, and we don't like discipline. So how can we make that more manageable? Well, we can eat better, and when we move, we can connect it to a sense of play, but it's still structure. We can put our headphones in, we can listen to music, we can listen to podcasts, we can dance if we don't like going to the gym, for example. Women often do this, right? They get their cardio in through something that they genuinely love, and dance is incredibly freeing. So it's play, but it also has a very practical, strategic, structural component in that it's excellent for your cardiovascular system. And without cardiovascular exercise, you're never going to get truly strong. So that's one way, right? It's just framing things in a different way. It doesn't have to be a chore. It depends on how you look at it. I guess that's essentially what I'm trying to say. So potential, play, structure, discipline. And I think the last component I want to talk about is adventure and risk. So play is a bit like adventure, right? Except play doesn't really have a definite goal. It's just fun. It's being in the moment. It's being present. Adventure / risk is a different thing. It's kind of a little bit more adult. It's a little bit more grown up. And what I mean by that is like nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? You can step into the unknown, figure out what you're good at. You can play around with it without worrying about the outcome. Then you can start to take little bits of that and structure it into a more adult, coherent, slightly more rigid pathway, right? But then there comes a point where you have to launch yourself. You have to say, I'm going to go as far down this path as I possibly can. And that's risky because you risk. It could be an investment that that you have at risk, money, right? It could be a sense of pride. It could be risky because you might ultimately get humiliated if you try something new and it doesn't work in the end. But the end, trying to reach that end is the risk, right? You can break down any plan into small enough steps, but ultimately you have to face the music one day, right? You publish that novel after being a dyslexic and jumping through 1,000 hoops and overcoming 1,000 steps and climbing up that your own personal Mount Everest, and you get there and you're like, wow, I never thought I would be able to publish a novel. And then you get there and that novel gets published and you're like, wow, my teachers told me that I couldn't even spell when I was a kid, and yet here the fuck I am. Kudos to me. You put that novel out there, it could still get trashed. It could still be like, this is no good. Fuck that. That's adventure and risk, right? You have to take that risk. You have to be willing to go on that adventure. Because even if someone doesn't like it, you still did it. And that's what I mean when I say, how do we feel more like ourselves at the beginning of this video? How do we manifest? We manifest by trying to figure out what our potential is, playing around with it, stepping into new areas, having structure and discipline, being willing to have that adventure and take that risk. And if we win and we succeed and we get the result that we want, fucking excellent, right? I did it. If you don't, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it doesn't matter because you self-actualized. You went from here all the way to over here, and you took all the steps necessary to create something or to become something or to learn something. And if people don't like what you became or created or learned, it doesn't matter because you self-actualized. You did all the necessary steps that 90% of people are unwilling to do or don't think they can do or will come up with an excuse for why they can't do them, but you did. That's manifestation in a nutshell. That's, when I say manifestation, that's self-actualization. That's manifesting from within. And I guess that's all I really want to say right now. So if you feel like you have untapped potential inside you, those are the steps. Try and figure out what that potential might be. Play around with different things. Find out the things that you do like. Try to adapt those things into some kind of structure, into a little bit more of a discipline, break them down into very, very small steps that you can take. You need a lot of time to get good at anything, or to manifest anything, to create anything. Give yourself that time. If you feel like you don't have enough time, steal moments of time. Like for something you love, something that you really enjoy, you can find the time. You can find 5 minutes before work here, 5 minutes after work there. Stop scrolling on your phone for hours and hours and just make time for it. Give yourself enough time and you can get good at anything. We have YouTube. We have basically a free university education available online at the touch of a button. Very, very skilled masters of their craft are giving away information for free online. All you need is an internet subscription and you can learn pretty much anything. And yeah, take that adventure, take that risk, self-actualize, become more than you were. I'm trying to do it. The people I admire are trying to do it. The best people are always trying to do that. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. Sometimes you risk everything and you fail, but you fail in an intelligent, spiritual, directional way. And that's what maturity is. That's what being an adult is sometimes you got to take the losses, you got to take the punches, right? But as long as you're moving forward and you're getting closer to feeling like I did what I wanted to do and I did it well. Whether I win or lose, whether I fail or succeed, I did it well. And that is mastery, ultimately, isn't it? That's the kind of manifestation that we all want in our lives. And so, yeah, forgive me if this was a little bit rambly, but these are just my thoughts off the cuff. And I'll speak to you soon, guys. Peace.